Simon says subscribe and click on the bell icon to receive notifications.
Let me introduce you to today's instructor, Dave Casuto. Dave has 2 master's degrees, one in instructional technologies and the other in organizational psychology. He's actually trained countless learners face-to-face and actually probably millions of students and learners on his online courses. And he's actually created a significant number of courses for Simon Says It, including various courses for Adobe products, including Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and a large number of courses for Microsoft products, including a number of recent courses for Office 365, including our just recent published Excel 365 Essentials course. And finally, David is an intrepid traveler traveling to nearly 50 countries. So I'll pass it over to you, Dave.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm very excited to be here, so thank you for this. And I look forward to this session where we're going to be talking about conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is essentially the ability to modify the format, or another word of saying format is the look and the feel of a cell based on a certain criteria or a certain condition, right? So you might want to have something stand out a little bit more if it has a certain variable in there. Maybe it's reached a certain number or it has a certain word in it. So let's look at some examples to illustrate this. But we're going to go through a number of examples, very detailed, and really to kind of give all of us a lot of kind of like to prime our imagination to really be able to see, hey, is this for me in this opportunity versus this opportunity? So one example is, let's say you're looking at words. You might want to have all of the admin team, right? So the word admin is inside the cell and you want to highlight it in yellow. You really want it to stand out, right? Or maybe you want to filter it by the admin team, something like that, right? So you might want to put, a border around it, something like that. You can also work with numbers. Everyone whose numbers, right, or sales numbers are over 1 million, it's highlighted in orange. And what's so nice about this is that they're what we call dynamic, meaning it's kind of a living organism. So let's just say Bob, his sales numbers are 800,000. All of a sudden he gets to 1.5 million. He will automatically go up to orange. So that's what I mean by dynamic. We're going to see these as the numbers grow or as the cells change, so does the formatting. Another example is blank cells, right? That's a really important one. If you want to really identify when something is missing, really make it stand out. And this is just a tiny, tiny handful of what you can do with conditional formatting. And just so you know, we're going to be starting from the basics of conditional formatting, and by the end, we're going to be going pretty sophisticated. Just bear with me as we just kind of go through it with some of just kind of like training wheels and understanding kind of what it is, how we use the tools, how we modify them, and then we're going to kind of ratchet it up a few notches and get into high gear by the end. All right, so if you're ready to go, let's go. You'll notice that there's actually quite a few tabs down on the bottom. So we're going to be staying on this particular file pretty much the whole time. And then we're going to just be going through all of these. Now, there's a few of them here that have an opportunity for you to practice. So I will pause a little bit and give you a chance to practice anytime. Now, also, you'll notice here that occasionally I'll be doing kind of stuff like this. So you kind of know where my mouse is. You'll see here I can kind of do like this kind of thing here. You'll kind of see me do that. So just keep an eye on my mouse, and I might zoom in a little bit as well. Okay, so for this particular tab here, where we start off with CF1, you'll notice how every single instance of the word West is coming in pink, right? Well, that's not a coincidence. There is a conditional formatting rule, right? I'm going to use that word rule with emphasis because that's what Excel calls it. So you can see there is a conditional formatting rule within this column that says, hey, every time we see the word West, make it come up in pink. Well, let's just test it out. Let's change Diana Stone from East to West. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now you'll notice automatically she now changes, right? It's all built into the cells. It's beautiful. Let's go ahead and change Michael Lee to North. I do that, and you can see now Michael loses his formatting. It's all built in because of conditional formatting. So let's now see how this is done. So just like how a lot of formatting is done, you have to select it to affect it, okay? Meaning, we need to actually tell Excel what is going to receive the conditional formatting. So if I look at department and I want to make everybody in the marketing department come in, let's just say yellow, I can very easily do that. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight everything, go all the way down here. I've selected it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to our home tab, and you see there's this option for conditional formatting. You click on that, and there's quite a few options that appear here. We're going to focus right now just on this first highlight cells rules option. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You can see here that we have some that have to do with just numbers, greater than, less than, between. There's even one for dates, right, which is really nice. Equal to, and that could be equal to really like anything, whether it's text or numbers. But then what we're concerned with here, this equal to, and what do we want it to say? Equal to what? Well, I said earlier it's going to be marketing. And now notice how it automatically shows up here in this default color of light red fill with dark red text. Well, I said I didn't want that. And guess what? Excel gives us other options. And that options now is going to be yellow. And it automatically changes. I click OK, zoom back out, and you'll see that every single instance of the word marketing is now coming up in yellow. Let's change Diana Stone from West to marketing, and she now gets her color. So understand really not just how we do it, but the value of it. As you can see that we can now identify these things very quickly and easily, right? That's where that kind of like formatting comes in. It's like, oh, look at all the marketing. They come up right away. Okay, beautiful. Now let's go ahead and take a look how we can do this with numbers. So I'm going to actually say, hey, I want to know everybody who's inside of my company who's making over, let's say, $100,000. Now, in this case, I'm going to do my selection, but I'm going to show you a nice, quick way to do some selection. And that's going to be Control plus the Shift key. And then I'm just going to do the down arrow. Okay, Control, Shift, and then the down arrow. So when I click on this, I'm going to do Control and Shift on my keyboard. If you're on a Mac, which I'm sure some of you are, it's going to be Command, Shift, and then down arrow. And you'll notice how it just goes all the way down. And that can save you a lot of time if you have a very large spreadsheet. Okay, so Control, Shift, or Command, Shift, down arrow just goes all the way to the end of the spreadsheet. So again, I've selected it to affect it. Now this time I'm going to go to conditional formatting, and then you'll see here I have highlight cells rules, greater than, less than, etc. But I want you to notice at this point that I have this other really, really valuable tool about the top bottom rules. Well, you may only want to know, let's say, for example, the top 10 earners in your company, or let's say the top 30% of your earners. You have that ability to do that right here, because I certainly don't know that calculation, right? And that's changing all the time. It's really nice to know that I can conditionally format it all throughout. And of course, you can do the bottom X number, and as well as you can do average. If this is important to you, this is a really great thing to explore. All right, so let's now go over to here to highlight cells rules. And then my first choice right away is greater than, right? And that makes it super easy. Love that. So I'm just going to say greater than, and I'm just going to type out 100,000. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do, instead of choosing from their presets, I would like to customize this, because these are really nice, like red and yellow and green, etc. But I'd really like to customize it. You know, I'm really kind of in a purple mood today, right? Or those are my company colors. Whatever it is, I can now customize the format. So I come over to here, and you'll see here that I have a lot of different formatting choices, right? Like notice here is even like a number format choice, right? If you want to put in whatever, $ around that or whatever you want to do. Notice here is font. So a font would be, yeah, certainly let's change the font type, the font color. I can even put a strike through it, you know, so you can see there's a lot of sort of options when you want to format something, not just for basic color, basic font, etc. You can do all that. You can put a border around it as well, just really make it stand out. So if I wanted to say, hey, listen, you know what? I'm going to make an outline around everybody, right, who has over 100,000. I can very easily do that. And then I'm going to give it a nice little fill. And what I say earlier, let's do this kind of nice little light purple. But I'm going to come back here to my font, and you know what? I'm going to make it bold. Okay? So if I can expect that, I'm going to have bold, a border, and also a purple fill for everybody over 100,000. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now you can see a little glimpse into that. Let me zoom out a little bit. And then I say OK, and I scroll down, and we'll see beautiful. Just like that, I have all of those parameters that I like. okay, based off of that criteria. All right, now let's go ahead and give somebody a big fat raise. Davis Lee's been working here for long enough. He deserves a big fat raise. He's going to go up to 150,000, and lo and behold, he then gets the new formatting. Okay, so really, really nice. And imagine if this was based on a formula. And formulas are nothing else but changing all the time, right? If nothing else, they are dynamic. So we want to make sure that the things that we want to see are popping out all the time. Let's imagine things are going to change, right? Let's imagine my new boss comes in. Simon's my new boss, and he says, listen, you know what? We're not doing purple anymore. And you know what? We actually want to see everybody who's making over 160,000. It's like, oh, man, okay. What do I do then? Well, what we need to do now is we need to go kind of under the hood a little bit into our sort of control center for all things conditional formatting. So if I go over to here to my conditional formatting again, you're going to see that way down at the bottom here is this manage rules. This is where we're going to go to essentially manage the rules, right? Where we can see the rules that we'll be able to create from scratch. We'll be able to edit the rules, even duplicate rules if we want to use them again. And while you're here, just notice there's also an option to clear the rules, right? So at some point, you wanted to clear rules from the entire sheet. This could save you a lot of time. You're like, you know what? I inherited it from that other guy in accounting. I don't want to use that anymore. You can very, very easily clear it from the entire sheet. But what we're going to do is say manage rules. And now from here, you'll see something kind of a little bit surprising with the fact that I only have one rule showing and I know that I have three. And that could throw some of us off. And what's happening here is that it's only showing formatting rules for the current selection, right? You see, for all these guys here. So it's a very simple fix. All I have to do is just change it to this worksheet, right? So that's really easy. So I just say this worksheet. And now, oh my God, wow, there's a lot going on here. All right. And the only thing I wanted to change is what Simon asked me to do. Say, hey, listen, you know what? We're going to make it go to 160 and we're going to change the color. So if you'll notice up on top here, I have the option to edit the rule, delete the rule, and even duplicate the rule, right? Again, saving us a lot of time at some point. So I'm going to go ahead now and just say edit rule. And now this is going to take me to this kind of antiquated looking dialog box. But if we focus really on the content, we can see here format only cells that are greater than, and you say, oh, there's my number. Oh, and look at that. There's my format. So great. So all I need to do is just change this to 160. Okay, make my boss happy. And then my format is going to go from this color, and let's just do like a nice, pretty sort of mango looking color there. I like that. All right, and then just notice while you're here, you've got patterns and all the stuff that you could potentially do, right? You got all these fun things you can really experiment, fill effects. So if that's your look and feel, just know you can do that. All right, and you can always come back and change it. And that's the beautiful thing. So very nice. I was able to change that. I click OK. And then if I want to get a preview of it before I click OK again, I can now just choose apply because you know what? I'm not sure. And my boss is right behind me and I'd say, hey, Simon, what do you think of this? Okay, all right, well, good. The 150,000 went away. Let's see. All right, that's looking pretty good. We like it. Okay, great. Then we've committed to it and now we're okay with it. So everything's looking pretty good there. So let's go over to here now to CF icons. I'm going to kind of give you a few different sort of like previews of all the different tools that we can do. And then I'm going to finish it off with my ultimate goal for what I want to do is to make icons live here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all of these numbers here. And once again, I'm going to use my fancy Control, Shift, and down arrow because you got to select it to affect it. And I'm going to come back over to here to my conditional formatting. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to kind of jump over these first two we talked about and go over to these preset data bars, color scales, and then finally to icon sets. So data bars, it's probably just best for me to demonstrate for you. If I hover over any of these, right, I just want you to notice what happens over here on the left-hand side. You see that? How I'm able to actually get this kind of like little mini graph that's kind of built right into the cell, right, to show me what's kind of like the smallest all the way to the highest numbers. If you notice in like row 6, 10,000 is significantly smaller of a bar compared to what's in row 4, the 22,000. So, okay, cool, that's showing me in such a way, which could be kind of nice. You might prefer that. All right, you can try some other ones there. What's your color? Anything you want to do here, right? And also notice there are other options that could take you to quote unquote more rules and give you more choices around that. So this might be what you want to do, and this is a great way to just, again, communicate your story around your data. Let's look at color scales. Color scales is different than data bars because it does in fact fill up the whole cell, but the color itself is determined by where it falls from the beginning to the end, from the lowest to the highest. So if we look over here, you see the lowest is in red, the highest is in green. And notice that happened automatically. I didn't have to do anything at all. It's all built into it. We're going to talk about in a little bit how we can control where the beginning and the end is, because a lot of the stuff is very automatic. We might want to have some control sometimes. Okay, so if I just click on that, that's great, and that's there to stay. All right, and that might be the way you want to do it. But I'm going to go and undo that. Now let's go over to here and check out these icon sets, and these are really fun because they get to kind of, again, tell our story in a little more of a visual way, you know, with these beautiful little icons. They're going to communicate and illustrate different points. Okay, so again, all you got to do is hover at this point. You can see these individual shapes. Really simple, from highest to lowest. You know, the highest one's a little green, Look at that, here's a little check mark, all these things here. I'm going to do things a little bit more kind of, you know, fancy. So I'm going to show you also possibly a new tool that you have not done before, which is linking your data. So your data that's here is going to live over here. And ultimately, what I'd like to do is make it, I just have an icon here, or even maybe you want to go back to what we did before with the cells and the different bars. And I want to make it so it's just the icon here that relates to this. I'm going to link whatever is inside of 13,000 right here in B2 into C2 by simply just tapping on the equal sign. When you do equal sign, most of us probably know, like, oh, you do equal sign, that's a formula. But it also allows us to link, right? So if I click on this now, it says, oh, whatever is going to be in B2 is going to show up here. So if I hit enter, you see I get the same exact number. All right, I'll do that one more time. Equal sign, click on that, and then enter. And you see how I've now linked it up, right? So whatever changes here, if I just say make this 40,000, see, that's going to change to 40,000. So they're just linked up, right? They're pretty much the same exact cell. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do an autofill where I'm going to make this cell go all the way down to all the rest of them respectively. So they just essentially just copy everything down. So the autofill is going to make it so this is going to go B3, B4, etc. So it goes all the way down. The fastest way to do autofill is just to move your mouse right on top of this little green square right there, hover over it, and then just simply double click. I double click and then boom, I've got all my numbers here. Okay, and that's great. I'm super happy with that. But now I need to put in these icons. So let's go ahead now and highlight all of these, same exact numbers here. And then once again, go to conditional formatting. And then once again, I'm going to choose my icon sets. And then for right now, let me go ahead and just choose these basic shapes. And now that's great, but you know what? Why are there redundancies here, right? Simon, my boss, is not very happy. It's like, well, what do you do here? Okay, well, I only want the icons and I want them to reflect this on a separate column. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go back over here to manage rules again. And then notice there's my icon sets. And very simply, all I'm going to do is edit this rule. Now, when I edit this rule, you're going to see a whole sort of magical world of options for me. I choose this, and we're going to see that I have all of these wonderful choices to be able to customize this. So notice here it says icon sets right there. This is my icon style I've chosen. And then you also have these three icons right here. And then you also have all the different parameters for how it's even being decided as to where the green lives versus the yellow versus the red. Meaning the green is going to be in the top, what is that, 33%. This is in the middle, 33%. This is in the bottom, 33%. You can absolutely customize these to whatever you want. I can now absolutely change this to be anything I want to, right? Back to where I was before. If I choose this now, it's going to override it. But that's not really my goal here. My goal is to kind of do a mix and match. And my goal is also to make it so only the icons show. So how do we do that? I'm going to go over to here to mix and match. I'm going to say, listen, you know what? I'm going to put a little green flag for the top one. For the middle one, I'm just going to do, let's just say, a triangle, a yellow triangle. And then I'm going to keep this as is for the red. So look at all that control you have when you're using conditional formatting and using icons. So I just want to let that kind of settle in a little bit, sink in, and just kind of see the wonder this is, right? The fact that we have all that level of control. We're now going to make this so it's just show icon only. Okay, so you'll see here, if I say show icon only, and I very simply choose OK, and watch when I hit apply, you'll see how it now only shows the icon. But what's so cool is that the numbers are still there, and they are still reflecting this. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and now let's just go ahead and change this to 27,000. Notice how that changed. Let's make this 8,000 for this guy. Notice how that changed, and even some other ones changed there. So they're all kind of living next to this one here, right? So really, really slick. Let's go ahead and try that one more time. Let's go back to conditional formatting. Let's go back to manage rules. Let's go ahead and edit this rule once again. And let's say I wanted to change it all together, meaning I don't want to use the icon sets anymore. I want to do data bars. And let's just try this as it is, right? I'll just go ahead and say, OK, hit apply. And you see that? I can do that very, very easily. I can edit this rule and say show bar only. Click OK, hit apply. Oh, you know what? That's maybe even better. I really like that. Let's do one more time. Let's go back into here. And then just note here that you have the option to even say a specific number you want to be the minimum or the maximum, right? Because the maximum now is showing 27,000, but I might want to go even deeper to say, okay, what's my number going to be? My highest number is actually going to be 50,000. It's not going to be kind of taking up so much room because we might want to say, hey, our goal is really to go way beyond the highest number that store 100 has, so we can kind of control the story. Big takeaway here is, as we're working with any of these, is the amount of creative and sort of strategic and storytelling control we have. So all these things here, we have the ability to control, right? Even putting a gradient fill, changing the color, like how we change the icon, we can do all these wonderful things. Okay, so I'm going to keep it as this, because this is where my boss Simon wants me to be. And there you have it. And now if I just bring this back down to just say like 10,000, let's test it out. Notice how that number now shrinks. So look how cool that looked connected to that one. So it's a great storytelling technique. All right, very good.
Hi, from everyone at Simon Says It. We hope you're enjoying this training lesson. Please like this video to show your support for the channel. If you want to take your learning further, earn a certificate for this course, and gain access to over 200 courses ad-free, click up there and go to simonsaysit.com. Thanks for watching, and back to the course.
Now, let's now move on to another type of conditional formatting. And this is a pretty simple one. And this has to do with blanks, blank cells. All right, so let me just demonstrate one that's right now current. I'm just going to go ahead and just get rid of all these numbers and make them, guess what, blank. So I hit delete. You can see here, it now absorbs a certain color. Based off of the condition of being blank, it now has the formatting, right, of red. Right, easy as that. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in another number here. It now loses that because it's no longer blank. Super easy. Let's go ahead and see how that looks. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight everything I want to have that condition and that conditional formatting rule. I'm going to go over here to conditional formatting, and guess what? There is no preset thing for blanks here. I'm like, oh man, what about that one? Oh wait, no, okay. So you know what I got to do? I got to do this thing called new rule. So now when I go to new rule, I get back to this dialog box where I saw before, and there's quite a few to choose from here. Format all cells that are based on their values, very similar to what we've already done before. So we can probably scratch this one. Format only cells that contain. Well, that's an interesting one. And you can see here based off the cell value. Notice here's an option for between two numbers. That's great. Oh, but you know what? I'm kind of intrigued by this drop-down menu. And then notice how many choices are here, including blanks. So that's really what I want to be working with here. Okay, so I'm going to go over to here to only format blanks, and that's super simple. There's no other real parameter around that for blanks. So I'm going to say format only cells with blanks. Boom, that's my criteria. And my format, I'm just going to make it kind of fire engine red. Can't miss it. Hit OK. And boom, there you have it. So if I'm looking at a bunch of numbers and I was like, oh my God, wait, I missed the people who haven't signed up yet, or where are all my sales data? Boom, you can't miss it. It's just highlighted right there. Okay, so I'll just test it out, make that blank, just hit delete. And there you have it. It is now showing up in red. So that's a pretty straightforward one. Now, one thing I just want to show you as a nice little bonus too is if blanks are really important to you, I've got a few different functions that are all right here as well, right? So if I were to go to, let's say, this one right here, blank days, I want you to notice if I double click on that, I'm getting this formula called count blank. It's counting the number of blanks in that range of data. See that? Right now it says 7. So if I get rid of these, now it says 9. I have 9 blanks. Another really great one is I want to know the blanks for all of my cells, and that's over here. You see I double click on that one. It says count blanks for what range? B2 through G16. Okay, really nice, really helpful. Again, it's about telling your story, but also making things just kind of stand out, easy for you to find. And in this case, it's now giving us some quick numbers in addition to the conditional formatting. Now we're going to transition into kind of next level working with conditional formatting. Okay, and this is going to be working with formulas inside of conditional formatting. So now we have the sea of formulas, and I'm going to give you a demonstration of what this looks like. All right. So currently we have this monthly target, and our monthly target is 4,000. So what I want to know is, hey, every time somebody meets or beats that number of 4,000, make it highlighted in green and orange or whatever color that is. So now let's go ahead and see it in action. Let's have January. Oh, we got some new numbers in. That's 6,000. Boom. See that? It automatically did that, right? Because there's conditional formatting kind of baked into this, right? Let's now make March go down to 2,000. And you can see, beautiful, it loses conditional formatting because it no longer meets that criteria. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So what we're going to do in this case is I'm going to stay on this particular file, and we are going to deconstruct what's going on to make this happen. Now, before we get into this, I want to make sure that we understand two important variables within Excel, one called absolute references, and the other one, anybody, wait for it, is relative references. And you'll note them typically with like dollar signs, so you might see something like that, right? But sometimes you may see where it's kind of like half absolute reference, half not absolute reference. So when we do see these dollar signs, it means it's an absolute reference. If there's no dollar signs, it means it's a relative reference, okay? So typically, if you're just going to drag down like how we did earlier with this one, when I just dragged it down, that was a relative reference, right? Because it said relative based off of B2. I want to add on B3, B4, B5, etc. Many times you don't necessarily want to do that because you want it to be absolute, meaning I want it to link up only to one cell. I want it to stay locked. So that would be an absolute reference. So within conditional formatting, that same rule applies. All right. So let's just go ahead and deconstruct what's going on here so we can kind of see the answers before we do it ourselves. So I'm going to go over here to conditional formatting. I'm going to come over here to manage rules once again. Okay. I'm just going to zoom in to sort of show you what's happening here. The first thing I want you to notice is on the right-hand side, believe it or not, where it says here, well, what is it applying to, right? What is going to actually be receiving the formatting? And it's going to be B5 through B16, right? Okay, that makes sense. That's this guy through that guy, right? These guys are going to be receiving a formatting. Nothing too fancy there, but that means that the first thing we have to do is select it. Then we've got this guy right here, which is going to be what we're going to type in. And if we look at this and we kind of say it in like real language, we're going to say B5 is greater than or equal to what's in B1. Now notice the difference between these two. This is an absolute reference because we always want it to be locked in at B1, right? An anchored reference, an absolute reference, a locked reference. It's that same concept. Where B5, we actually don't want that to be locked in because we want it to go B5, B6, B7, and then go all throughout, where it just kind of spills down. So one formula does the trick for all of it. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, we're going to have to learn how we can convert something to an absolute reference very quickly and easily. All right? So let's go ahead and try it on this practice tab. And if you don't see it here, it might be one over. You can see there's the CF formula practice, and you can just certainly watch me. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and highlight everything, come over here to conditional formatting, and just choose new rule. And this time, we're going to choose use a formula to determine which cells to format. And now it's ready for me to put in my formula. So every formula starts off with an equal sign. Hopefully we know that. Okay, we're going to say if this guy is greater than that guy, right? Super easy for me just to click on it. It absorbs the cell value and it puts it right in. Okay, so really nice, really helpful. However, if I were to execute this right now, it would not work. Why would it not work? What's happening here? Yeah, I know that we're working with absolute references, but wait, this one's not supposed to be an absolute reference. So we have to convert this from an absolute reference to a relative reference so it spills down to the rest of these. So there's a nice keyboard shortcut on your keyboard. If your F keys work accordingly, just to do F4 to now convert that. Watch as I do F4. See, I'm now doing that. See, I'm now making it absolute, kind of quasi-absolute, boom, and now ultimately to relative. See that? So I want it to now spill down to all of its kind of children cells down below. And then this B1 should stay in place, exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and format that. And what should I do this time? Okay, so I'll just do this nice little light blue color. I'll do font of bold. Okay, great. Good enough for now. Just want it to really stand out. And then let's try it out. I click OK, and then beautiful. Totally works. And just imagine this for your own data. Imagine this for just a large swath of data. Imagine this for any type of kind of criteria you're trying to match up to. So let's test it out now. Let's go February, 3000. Boom, it now turns to blue. So we've got this nice little airtight ship. The other thing you may want to do, by the way, is change your monthly target. It's like, oh, you know what? Our monthly target is now about 3050. And now notice it's all dynamic, right? Everybody is connected to it. You're telling this like airtight story. Let me just bring that up one more time, just so you have a good idea of it right there, because this part's a little different, a little bit of a departure compared to some of the basics, but super helpful nonetheless. Let's go into something potentially even a little bit more kind of not only advanced, but I want to say useful for us. So I'm going to go over to here to this B versus A, right? B versus A just stands for our budget versus our actuals. Now, I'm going to kind of break this exercise down into two phases. Which of these has our actuals for our, our spending higher than our budget? And you'll notice here that every single one of these that's highlighted has a higher actual than a budget, right? Notice how this is not highlighted, right? You can see that versus that, all that stuff, right? You can see all that. So now if I make my budget all of a sudden go up to 10,000, it loses its color. Now we're going to kind of deconstruct all this in a little bit, but I'm going to do a really simple one at first, just so we can kind of have a good idea of like how we can use conditional formatting on a simple level. And then we're going to go a little bit deeper into it, because this is really nice because the fact that it highlights the whole row, which is really great. May not be what you need. So I'm going to start off with something kind of simple. And then you can say, all right, you know what, that's all I need, Dave. I'm cool with that. Or maybe some of you want to have a little bit kind of more sort of dynamicism and color and sort of communication. So go over here to BA practice. And I'm just going to highlight my actuals column right here. And now I'm going to say conditional formatting, highlight cells rules. And I'm going to say greater than. And in this case, instead of putting in a number, I'm just going to put in this little cell right here, right? I'm just going to put A2. I'm going to convert this to a relative reference. And what key am I hitting to do that on my keyboard? F4. So notice what this is doing here, right? It's just highlighting the one cell that is now greater, right? It doesn't do the whole thing, which is fine, right? For right now, maybe that's all we want, right? It's not doing the whole row, But you can see here how it's now saying A2, but it's a relative reference. So therefore it goes A2, A3, A4, etc. automatically. Okay, let me just do that one more time. So I'll highlight everything. I'm going to go over here to conditional formatting, highlight cells rules that are greater than, something we've already done. The one key thing we have not done, instead of putting in a number, we're saying, here's the cell that I want, and I want to make it so instead of being an absolute reference, I'm making it into a relative reference. See that? And now it absorbs it just like that. And I'll change my colors to something else. Let's do green and click OK. And beautiful. That's all set. That's all done. And that's a pretty neat thing to be able to do. And this is a very realistic example that we just really need to have those things stand out. Now I'm going to go ahead and clear this out. And now we're going to go a little bit more kind of fancy, if you will, right? Where I am going to work with actually highlighting the whole row. So I'm going to clear out the rules. Remember earlier, I can very easily clear out these rules. I don't want them anymore from the selected cells or the entire sheet. It's fine. Okay, I'll say selected cells. So now those rules no longer exist. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the first one that I did because I want you to see kind of how this was created. Again, we're going to kind of look at the answers and deconstruct it. I'm going to go back to my conditional formatting. I'm going to say manage rules. And now I want you to notice here is this formula. And then also notice what it's applying to. Again, I want you to first focus on this part here. Notice how both columns are highlighted. It's A2 through B20, right? A and B, right? First time I did it, I only did column B. That's going to be the first thing we want to do. And then you'll notice this one is kind of an interesting one because it has kind of a half absolute reference, right? And a half relative reference because we only want to lock in the column, but we want to continue having those rows be relative and spilled down. All right, and remember how we hit F4 a few times? So that's really the trick here to make this happen. And we're going to do this again when we get to another even larger example. Okay, so again, what's our goal is to make the whole row selected, right, or highlighted to be able to really identify it. So let's go ahead and try it out. I'll go over here to BA practice. And then what's the first thing I do is I highlight everything. So I'm going to use that keyboard shortcut of Control Shift down arrow, but I'm going to add in a nice little bonus of right arrow. Right, see that? How it now selects both going down and all the way to the right. So Control Shift down arrow, and then still holding down Control Shift and tap on the right arrow. Very good. So now let's go to our conditional formatting. New rule. Same deal, use a formula. That's great. And now what is my formula? Well, I'm going to say if, right, equal sign, okay, this is greater than that. However, that's not complete. This is not accurate. If I leave it at this, it's not going to do it. If you recall, it has to only be absolute on the columns, and it has to be relative on the rows. Okay, so very easily now, I can click on it and just do my F4. Kind of toggle through. You can see there's my $sign next to the B. Okay, I'll zoom in on that for you so you can see it. And that's really kind of like maybe the trickiest part of this, to really understand how this is happening, why it's happening. And if we forget to do this, you'll see that you will not get the right response. So Excel is going to tell you pretty quickly, like, yeah, that's close, but no cigar. So again, what we're doing is we're making it so the relative part only stays on the row, so it goes down, but it stays absolute with the columns, so it doesn't continue to go to C, D, E, and F. It's just going to get confused. Okay, and again, what did I do? I highlighted everything. So therefore, all the rows will get highlighted if it meets the criteria. So I'll go over here to fill. Let's go ahead and make it green this time. And I do like to make it bold. Click OK. Click OK. And then beautiful. I got exactly what I wanted. So you're taking a look at that. All my actuals that are higher, now make sure that it highlights that whole row. So now I can know, like, whoa, we got a problem here. So let me just break that down for you one more time so we have a good idea of what we did and why it's doing it. Because we need to kind of really understand the language and the thinking that Excel has as why these absolute references and the relative references are doing what they're doing in this case. So that way we can kind of teach ourselves in other contexts. Notice this huge data set, right? A lot bigger, at least comparatively. I need to know, listen, everybody who's in building 1 should be in green. Everybody who's in building 2 should be in red, etc. Right? And I have one criteria, which is my building, but I wanted to determine the color for the whole row. So let's just see it in action. I'm going to change Howard, right here, it's Howard Smith, from building 1 to building 3. Watch what happens now, magically, wait for it. The whole row now changes color based off of one criteria. How slick is that? Let's change now building 2 guy for Kendrick Hapbush. Change that to building 1. Boom, beautiful. Look how slick that is. We've created a little machine. So the good news is everything I just taught you in that last lesson is exactly the same way, but it's just with more data. It's just more cells that we have to select. So if we deconstruct this, I'm going to go over here to Manage Rules, and you can see here, let me zoom in, that we have these 3 individual rules for 3 buildings, right? That makes sense, okay? And notice here what is applied to, and this is very important. I highlighted A through I, right? I highlighted all the data first. This is the part that you may kind of forget because you're thinking really mostly about the building, but I want the whole swath of data, the whole array, to be highlighted. So therefore I have to select all of it. And that's really the important part. So this should really be kind of the number one thing. In my opinion, it should be on the left-hand side. So, because that's kind of how it reads. And now we have our formula. Okay, so if we go over to here, we see equals, and look at that. There's our kind of quasi relative reference combined with an absolute reference. And then you can see here's our criteria. In this case, the criteria is literally the word building 1, right? Whereas before it was a formula where we said this is greater than this. And then notice it's also in quotes. Okay, so let's go ahead and build this out. So we go over here to CF Rows lesson. And what's the first thing I do? We should all be echoing this at home. We highlight everything. So I'm going to click on A6. I'm going to do my fancy Control-Shift down arrow and right arrow. I'm going to go over here to conditional formatting. And I'm going to go over here to new rule. Right? Same thing. And then once again, use a formula. And now, let's just go ahead, equal sign, because it's a formula. Don't forget, we're still in formula mode. And then you'll see here, I'm just going to click on G6. And automatically it comes in as what? An absolute reference. Don't want that. I'm going to fix it later on because I want it to be kind of a quasi-absolute. So I'm going to say equal sign because G6 is equal to what? And in quotes, very important, I'm going to type out building 1. And these typically are not case sensitive, so you should be okay, right? But I like to do it anyway. All right, so let me just zoom in here so you can see. Am I ready to go? No, I am not ready to go because this needs to be converted to make it so that G stays absolute. The column of G stays absolute, but the rows continue to go down, 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 down to find all of the buildings staying within the same column, but alternating rows as it goes down. So now let's go ahead and say format. I'm going to say fill, and I'm going to use purple this time just because. All right, and I'm going to say okay. And now I click okay, and magically all my building 1s appear in purple. Okay, and I'm going to change now building 2 for Howard Smith to building 1, and now he's purple with the rest of these. Look at that, magic. You got a little machine here. Now, I don't want to have to do that over and over and over and over again. So what I'm going to do this time, I'm going to go ahead and just go over here to my conditional formatting. And notice I'm not highlighting anything, right? Because I don't have to, because I'm now going to go over here to manage my rules. And I'm just going to duplicate this, right? Why not? Duplicate it. This is where duplicate really, really comes in handy. I have 2 of the same, and I'm just going to very simply edit this because it's pretty much the same exact thing, except it's going to be for building 2, and the format is going to be different. Go ahead and do maybe a light green color. Okay, I'll hit apply. Great, love that. So I can see that, and then I'll do one more while I'm here. Let's duplicate this rule, edit it, and this time again, it's going to be building 3. All right, I'll do this light orange color, really make it stand out, and then click OK. And now let's hit apply, and we got a full house. Beautiful. I click OK. Some things to understand also, by the way, is that when you start doing color, right, with conditional formatting or otherwise, Excel is actually paying attention to these things. So if you're planning to do, let's say, filtering based off of colors, right? You can do filter based off of colors, which is really, really nice. So you can do a filter by an icon, for example. So let me just go over to icons. Icons kind of fun, or any of these guys here. But let me just convert this back to icons. Okay, so I'll go back over to here. I'll say manage rules. Okay, I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to make these into icons again. So I want you to see how this is all kind of like part of the great Excel symphony. So I'm going to convert this now into a filter. Right, I'll go over here to data, to filter. And I want you to notice here that within my filter, I now have the option to filter by cell icons, for example. I do that, and see, now notice only my red ones are showing. Let's do another one. Let's do filter by green ones. Okay, great. Or maybe even want to sort by any of these here. Excel is always kind of saying, hey, I understand what you just did over there, and you can use that same tool in other places as well.
Well, congratulations everyone for completing this course. So hope you enjoyed this class, hope you learned a lot, and we look forward to seeing you in future lessons. Thanks everyone.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To see the full course that this video came from, click over there. And click over there to see more videos from Simon Says It.